Our last presenter on stage, once my technical glitch is over, I'm not going to say which brand I'm using here, but not what I would choose, although opinions are different on this. Excitement, drum roll. Here we go. Thank you for your patience. Our speaker will be Ivan, also known as IBB. IBB helps engineers and their teams write better blogs, handbooks, and more. Based on more than 15 years of experience as a technology editor. At InfoBip, Ivan leads the developer content team that has helped over 100 engineers start writing and even started shiftmag.dev, an award-winning developer magazine. Formerly, he founded Netokracia, the techno-crunch of the Balkans, according to TechCrunch itself. The title of the talk, Crafting an Engineering Handbook in 3 days or less. Please welcome on stage, with a huge round of applause, IBB.
Thank you, Peter. OK, so we're talking about engineering content, developer content today, or how to create an engineering handbook in just 3 days, which I'm sure sounds like a very, very short time. It was, but we'll go through the whole story. So I'm IBB. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, email me if you have any questions as relating to like writing posts, writing blog posts as a developer, handbooks, docs, social media. That's my jive. That's what I do these days. I also run ShiftMag. That's what my team does. It's a global developer magazine read by over 20,000 engineers per month. It's been doing pretty well on Reddit and Hacker News. A bit of trolley comments, you know how it is, but the content's really good. We have some really good interviews, and we're going to actually have an interview with Gergely Orosz soon as well from this very conference. So the story of the handbook that we made, that's going to be basically the basis of where I explain how to create a handbook. An engineering handbook started in a garage in the city of Zadar in Croatia. So I'm sure that some of you have been to the Croatian seaside. OK, yeah, obviously you have. So why did it start in a garage, in a very shady garage of a hotel in Zadar? Well, it started because there I met Damir Prusac. He is the VP of Engineering of InfoBip, the company where I now work. I was not working for them then. I was just at their conference, developer conference in Zadar. That's also for developers. And we said hi. And he remembered, oh, Ivan, you know, I think I want to write a book about how we do engineering at InfoBip. And I'm like, OK, cool. And, well, can you help us with that? Maybe, somehow, I don't know. Basically, I've been writing a lot the years before, running a tech blog. And his idea was, we need someone like you, an editor, to help us create the content. And the company that he worked for, which I now work for as well, InfoBip, is not well known. It's a pretty large company, 3,000 people, based from Croatia. And it's basically a CPaaS provider. So if you need SMS, WhatsApp, Messenger, through APIs for your apps, you use InfoBip, for example, right? So companies like InfoBip are also Twilio and the such. And the issue was that InfoBip always focused on B2B, enterprise sales and so on. They were never really as active in the engineering community, right? They wouldn't come to conferences like this and talk to developers as users. They would talk like to the CTOs, board members, etc. Well, what happened is InfoBip grew. As you can see from this chart, like the engineering department grew huge. So today we have over 800 engineers. Most of them are in Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Slovakia, so basically Central Eastern Europe. And again, as hiring ramped up, one of the issues was when the talent acquisition folks and recruiting would talk to engineers, most engineers would react, who the fuck are you? because they didn't know Infobip. Again, some enterprise company from Croatia, and it's not even from Zagreb. Like, you know Zagreb, you might know Split, Dubrovnik from Vodnjan. Does anyone know where Vodnjan is in Croatia? Right? It's a freaking village in the center of Istria. And we have a campus there with 300 people. Who knows this? Well, only Infobip people. So the issue was, again, sorry, I forget, I'm part of the company. We needed to hire. No one knew what engineering was doing, what the tech stack was, what the use cases were. And Damir told me, like, OK, can you help us? Also, my timer is not going, I just noticed. OK, so I don't go over my time. And then I started like talking to engineers in the community. So I've been involved in the tech and developer community for a long time. And one of the engineers that I knew told me, like, you know what the most useful advice is you can give to an engineer at any point in their career? And I was like, what is it? It was read the fucking manual. So I'm like, fine. So you mean like docs, right? If you have a product, you need docs to understand how to like work with the APIs, et cetera, et cetera. Well, yes, he said, but also read the fucking manual in terms of, is there a manual on how Infobip does engineering? No, that was the book. And if you Google like a lot of this stuff, you'll always get to the same question. That's like, read the fucking manual is very, very important. And if you look at different tech companies, especially some of them that have like really good employer brand, like GitLab, for example, they have everything in public, right? You can find all the details, not just about like the product, but about the company, how hiring works, what the tech stack is, how you can like move to a senior role, et cetera, et cetera. And GitLab is not the only one. You have also, like, for example, PostHog. And these were some of the companies that we looked at and said, OK, the issue with Infobip at that point was they wanted to write a blog for like years, like 800 engineers, and they couldn't. You have 800 engineers, not a single blog post, and at least 2 attempts that you might find on Google of like dead blogs. So we said, OK, let's not do a blog, because you will not be writing constantly at that point, but let's do something like this. Why? Because if you write something like this, you write it once and then you update it. OK, so the logic kind of makes sense, I guess. Because again, when engineers would come in, they would find the lack of docs disturbing. A good point here to mention is that, and Peter mentioned in the beginning, I had a lot of experience as an editor. I had been writing Netokracija, a site I found in Croatia, which is kind of like a TechCrunch kind of site. So we break stories on startups, investments, but we worked a lot with a lot of engineers and experts on how to write articles for the blog. So when you like kind of sort, OK, I can probably get these engineers to write. At that point, the new campus in Zagreb was being built. We were, and Damir, the VP from the beginning of the story, said, OK, let's go. And this seemed like kind of a mission impossible. We had a team to do this. So it was 20 staff members and 1 editor. I was the editor. It included our VP engineering, Damir. He was like the guy who made all the decisions. A couple of engineering directors, principal seniors from different areas, engineering areas. So we have 8 business areas total. A couple of folks from employer branding, and 1 person from POP, which is basically HR. And we had no writers there. An issue that Infobip had at that time as well is like the technical writers. Yes, they were writing docs for our enterprise customers, but they didn't have experience with this. And honestly, it didn't really matter. Because in most writing, when I see like marketing departments, PR departments, like even engineering leaders trying to get content written to promote for recruiting or for product or whatever, they're missing the point. You do not get marketing to write about engineering stuff. You get engineering to write about engineering hard, which is hard, but can be done. And yeah, we had 3 days. Why? Because these people, their time is very expensive, especially the directors and the principals. Their time is very expensive, and literally when Damir pitched the idea of this handbook to the board said, you have 3 days, and it's done. We need to get back to projects. Okay, so we get these people into the campus, and we have a bit of pressure. And I come in, do my intro, and I'm like, okay, we might be able to do this. But then I see this guy. So this guy is called Oliver. He's still our director of infrastructure. He's like a burly guy, a big guy, right? Like very nice, but a big guy. And after my like 5-minute intro, and this is the first time I'm meeting him and most of them, he just like stands up and says like, Ivan, this is interesting, but I don't think it'll work. At the beginning of these 3 days. Typical engineer, because again, in me, he saw a typical probably marketeer, content, whatever. I'm not sure this is going to work. Okay, so what do? Day one was ideation. What does this mean? This means we started with setting the mood. What do we want to create? What kind of content do we want to achieve? So we need inspiration. I created a mood board of sites like GitLab, explored a lot of links. Like in the days coming to the workshop, I asked all the participants to submit any docs they liked. It didn't need to be a culture handbook. It could be docs for APIs, for a product. It doesn't matter. Send me content you like, based on style, based on structure. I want to see what you're feeling. And then we also together, for like half of that day, explored examples like GitLab, like PostHog, to identify like the key things that we can take away, right? What can we learn from all these examples? And the next step was actually kind of simple, but kind of hard. And that was sketching and deciding. Now, I don't know how many of you have been part of different like design sprints. I'm guessing a lot of you for ideation, etc. Okay, so like it's this. So for those that have done design sprints, you know the freaking idea. So that was the concept, just for content. For those who have not done design sprints, the whole idea is to take ideation, creation of anything, in this sense, content, step by step, and basically make it as simple for the participants as possible, and to have everyone participate. Not just like Damir, the VP, saying we need to write about this, but like the principals from each area, the employer branding, everyone pitching in, so we can have this like shared knowledge. Because the biggest problem I see as a content person in most tech companies is you have all this institutional knowledge that's not being shared, because most people don't have time to write, and they don't have the experience of a writer. So as far as the target, and this is a question I get a lot, it's like, who are you writing for? Honestly, the target was not that problematic, because the target was developers like them. It was a hiring idea. It's like, you're writing to get someone like yourself to join the company. So that was easy. That was not a problem. And we used the sprint methodology written in the book Sprint by Jake Knapp. It's used in Google, like the Google Sprint, et cetera, et cetera. Like, really good book. I recommend it. So how to find these like really good group ideas? The problem with most ideation is we have an idea. We need to brainstorm, right? You get into a group in a meeting, and let's like everyone pitches. And what mostly happens is the most senior person, or maybe the loudest person in the room, wins. Or just like no one really wants to like risk their idea not being really good. And this is what happens with content, with any type of idea. You start with group, and you lose a lot of ideas along the way. What we did is the reverse, which you do in design sprints. You start with individual work and then move on to group work. How did that look? So basically, each of the staff members got time to, based on their area, write down every idea that they think needed to go in the handbook. So I don't know, oh, we need to write about the tech stack. We need to write about the technology. We need to write about our hiring process, et cetera, et cetera. And they had like half an hour or whatever. And each idea went on a little Post-it, as you see. And then we organized these Post-its, again, as part of the design sprint, into groups, into logical ideas where we knew that kind of the content would go. And we, in the end, had like this really big, like 2 boards of the structure we wanted the handbook to go. And we had input from the principals, we had input from the directors as far as like people managers, and we had input from employer branding and talent acquisition. Because what happens mostly is all of these content creators are insular, right? Because like engineering says, oh, our candidates want this, and then talent acquisition comes in and says, yeah, they want it, but what they ask us in interviews is this. Or they don't even come to talk to you because we've lost them on this question. And there's this like really cool thing where they all, through basically peer feedback, realize what's important and what's not. One really big also factor here is to have an outside person who knows the market but is not part of the company. The bullshittest employer branding posts that most tech companies do is because engineering, HR, and the CEO think that's really cool. And then they post it on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, and no one cares. Why? Because, well, the market is already over having craft beer in the office. There was this trend in Croatia and Serbia, and I know no other markets, when like all of these like really cool Silicon Valley BS things came in, and it was cool for a season or two. Like, yeah, we were all liking, like, oh, you have this cool new designed office. Awesome. Everyone's using Macs. Awesome, awesome. And then with time, that became the standard. No one cared. So you have to have an outside person, in this case it was me, to say, okay, you want to talk about everyone can have a Mac, but it's not as important as your tech stack or something that differentiates you. So everyone pitched in, even Damir. Damir is the second one on the left, the oldest guy, obviously. Sorry, Damir. So we had like who we are, tech stack, et cetera, et cetera. And then we went it through every idea, we grouped them, and we started deciding what was important, what was not, with Damir being the decider, saying like, okay, we have time for this, we don't have time for that, etc., and so on. And everyone pitched in. Unfortunately, Oliver was in like doing some email and not really sure if the idea is going to work. He had really big issues. He had to like resolve them in order to participate. So at the end of day one, we had the structure. We knew what content we wanted to create, and we knew what content we didn't want to create, and we were all mostly aligned on the importance, right? So we had an idea for the MVP. But again, we had only 48 hours. It was getting really dangerous, and I was kind of worried. And we still hadn't written anything. Day two, we started outlining. So how did this look? Again, you have the usual group to small groups. And we did something that I always do with the engineers I work with as far as writing goes. We did an outline like a journalist would do, right? So I had them outline everything they would write, for example, about the way we hire an infrastructure engineer. Everything down that comes to mind in groups. But then the next step, which was very important, was to structure it in an upside-down pyramid, which is this. So an upside-down pyramid, the idea here is to grab attention. In a lot of cases, engineers, because you're the sciencey kind, that doesn't translate well. But basically, you write like you're writing a science paper, right? You want to really structure it really well, and in most cases go step by step with the introduction and arguments, and then you end strong. The problem is, in this world where we have algorithms and we have clickbait and everything, unfortunately, even engineers are not paying attention. So when you're writing a handbook or any kind of content, like blog posts, etc., you really need to put the strongest points at the very beginning to captivate the audience. For journalists like me, it's answering the 5 W's, or the 6 questions. Who, what, where, when, why. Because when you're writing a journalistic article, you have to explain what happened, where did it happen. So if I was to write a story about an investment, if I know the number, what the investment is, I'm going to put at the very beginning or in the title, because that's what gets the people in. Or for example, if I'm writing about a startup and the startup is not known, in the community, but the founder is known, I'm putting the founder in the beginning. The most important thing needs to be either in the title or the beginning to captivate the reader. Because for a handbook, we want readers to skim around and get interested in one of the articles and then start reading. So we would start outlining. When we had these outlines, there was an issue. I was the only editor, and I had 20 people there. So what we did is peer review. Before I, as an editor, would come in and check everything, they would be grouped into small groups, and then they would do reviews of each other's content, right? It's peer writing, peer programming, whatever you want to call it. But in this case, it was peer review, and it worked quite well because, again, talent acquisition would say, oh, we never get a question about this. For example, we don't get a question about the number of data centers InfoBeep has, okay? And like, at first, someone would ask, well, then our engineers who are in the hiring process are not interested in that question. Maybe. But what happened is when we dug a little deeper was that they didn't even know to ask that question. They didn't know we had our own data centers. A lot of them thought, oh, you're using AVS, and so on. And it's like, nope. No, we're not. Like, DHH would be very proud of us. We're not using AVS. And this, again, showed a lot of content that was special, that was different, where InfoBeep as a company was different than the competition on the market. And then came day 3 for writing and actually reviewing. A very important point here. This was the first of many workshops. I've done a lot of workshops since then. When you're trying to get your engineers to write anything, again, a blog post, docs, a handbook, you need to go step by step and hold them by the hand, right? Because people who have never written before need, on one hand, education. You can have them go for a course or whatever. But even more important, they need feedback along these steps in order to know that they're going in the right direction. So although we've not written anything up until day 3, my team, the 20 people I had, was sure that we were going in the right direction. We knew what the structure of the content was day 1. We knew the outline. We really dove deep. And now it was a matter of just writing down the content. If we had ChatGPT then, it might have been easier. You never know. But in this case, I had something far better, and that was 20 experts who knew their shit. And they have never, and again, InfoBeep had one piece of documentation internally. We had a big Confluence base. But again, a lot of this knowledge was still in their heads, and we had 24 hours. As far as the platform that we use, if anyone is interested, the initial idea was, oh, we're going to publish it on a website. And then our head of the web said, yeah, in 5 months it's going to be able to go live. So we went with Gitbook, which is fine. And then we started writing. And writing is honestly like shoveling sand. Writing, in a lot of cases, is not building a castle. Building a castle is the editing part. When you're writing, again, a blog post, newsletter, social media, whatever, the initial idea is to write and just write and get everything out of your head so you can then edit the best parts, right? The writers that I know, when they have a really good idea for something, they just start writing about it. They don't worry, oh, is this going to be attractive to the reader? They just start putting words on, I almost said on paper, on the screen, in order to be able to edit it out. So when you're writing, you're shoveling sand. You want to get it all out there in order to then edit it out. So we started writing. And again, one issue that a lot of companies have when they're trying to get their engineers to start blogging or writing or docs or whatever is you have a due date. Sorry. That's like in a week or month or whatever. And what happens is because engineers love their work and they know their shit, they start complicating things. One question is, oh, has anyone written about this anytime ever in the history of the world? If they have, why would someone read me writing about that? Okay. Then it's, oh, wait, do I have all the information? I should check with every member of my team in order that all the content is there. And then you end up with not having any content because they overthink and no content gets written. What we had here is we had this day. And I'm a pretty strict editor. They needed to get to a certain character limit, which was honestly arbitrary, But that helped them not to overthink. They had one goal: write, 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 write. No stopping. Don't overthink. You have to write, because if you don't write, we wasted 3 days, and the board's not going to be happy. Not with me, with you. And again, it wasn't as pushy, but again, it helped them move along. The good thing with, again, limited time is there's no writer's block. You have to write something. I didn't tell them to write the next, I don't know, the next engineer's guide to, what is Gergely's book called again, right? I didn't ask them to write the next classic. I just asked them to document how something is done at InfoBeep, and that made it far easier for them. And it worked. So they wrote 1 page. So this is the scale of our systems. Then they wrote about testing and how you could do tests in whatever way you want at InfoBeep. Then they wrote about less. And we had a handbook in 3 days because we structured it along the way, right? And we published it on Gitbook, the platform that I mentioned. The good thing that happened afterwards is the results of the handbook and the content were so good that InfoBeep acquired my company. They said, oh, fuck, this works. Can you just come here and help us create more content this way? And honestly, at the beginning of this journey, I was very scared because I was not sure if it's going to work, but it worked. We got acquired. And we do these kinds of workshops each month now with InfoBeep, 2 times a month. We do workshops either in Zagreb, Sarajevo, in all our other R&D offices with our engineers, going step by step. So in these workshops, we get 10 engineers. The workshop is 2 days, 6 hours each day, and each of them picks a topic they're going to write about, and we go through the process that I mentioned, right? Ideation, alignment, outline, writing, and in 2 days, they've written an article. And they're done. There's no more homework. And we get to publish it. And we even launched a website for that. So that's the ShivMag that I mentioned. We got so much content. So last year, we managed to get, I think, around 120 articles from our engineers, from 0 to 120 in not even a year, because it's just going slowly, step by step. So if you want to create any type of content, don't just give your engineers a task, oh, write a blog post, and then tell them, I don't know, get a course on Udemy. Work with them closely, step by step, and you will see results. Believe me, because now, from the 800 engineers we have, around 100 have gone through these workshops, have written. And some of them, that's the best part, you identify the people that actually know how to write, that want to write, and you get offers. So what happens with ShitMag and some of the other developer content that we have is that these people now know that they have the support to write. They write continually, and they have hits on Reddit and Hacker News and so on. So, for example, Vedran had this article on Reddit, and this is all organic, right? No paid ads or whatever bullshit. So the article is called "It's Okay If Your Code Is Just Enough." More than 200 upvotes, 100 comments on Reddit. And the interesting thing about this, one other engineer was pissed at me because we published this, because it's not okay if your code is good enough. And then he wrote an article answering this article, and it was even bigger hit. And where did he write the article? In the workshop, going step by step. So, and we have more examples of these articles. Again, the method kind of works. This was about Kotlin. And it's also the way we do content now. We're going to have Gergely's interview on ShivMag. And it's the same for video. If you're doing basically any type of content, it works, right? Step by step and so on. And remember this guy, Oliver, who was not as sure. Ivan, this is not going to work. I get acquired. He was so happy about that. Infrastructure, his team now makes up 30% of all content that we write. After that workshop, he was convinced, and he said, OK, I want to promote my team, just go and write. And they do. And the handbook is actually visited by 3,000 engineers outside InfoBeep each month. No paid ads or all organic. When people are researching, do they want to work for InfoBeep or even clients? This kind of handbook and this kind of documentation where you're explaining how you work is useful, because your users and your clients want to understand, are you doing a good job? Not the API docs, right? Not docs for the actual software. It's about like basically docs for the people behind the software. And if they know that, oh, that's their tech stack, this is how they work, etc., it's probably going to help them choose your product or service, like even for service companies. And again, it's organic traffic. So what are some key points I'd like to mention at the end? That if you want to do this kind of workshop, and I'm sure you can do it, these would be like my 6 tips. If you want to create any type of content, it can be a handbook, a blog post, whatever, get the people you want to create the content in a room and have them like have limited time. It can be 2 days, 3 days, whatever. We did another workshop 2 weeks ago with product. They gave me 2 days. It was like, oh, Ivan, we don't have time because we have our product department is kind of not small, but it's like smaller than engineering. And it was like, I can't give you 3 days, we have 2. You work with what you can, but if you limit the time, it will also help create content. A clear process, obviously, going step by step, a mixed team, so you have to have people that can like contribute different points. So for example, if you want to create docs that are for the users, you're going to get people that are doing like user research, obviously, who are going to say, or people, for example, that are in marketing that know they're going to go into analytics and say, oh, these are the terms that our users are searching for. We need to write something about that. And like today, as part of the VFIF, we work closely like with analytics and our data engineers and so on. Peer feedback. Peer feedback is good, not just because like different people have different expertise. Because again, as an editor from the outside, I'm able to kind of understand everything, but the people inside the organization understand that like there was this one piece of content where they said, oh, we need to write about that, and someone said literally like, that's bullshit, we don't do that. We say we do that, we don't. I couldn't have said that because I didn't know. Now I know those types of things. Having an editor is good. If you can find someone like I was at that point, like someone with experience with technology content, an editor, someone that writes as a developer, there's a lot of people really like good, that would help. And in the end, like just start creating. And again, as I mentioned, very, very, very soon, we're going to have a product handbook as well out. Hopefully in the wild, it's going to be for clients first to test it, and then for everyone else. But don't quote me at that. Don't quote me at that. Hopefully it works soon. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Q&A time. Dear audience, I would find your lack of questions disturbing. So please make sure that you ask your questions. And I hope many of you got the Darth Vader reference that was mentioned on the slide. And we already have 3. It worked. Wonderful.
Is this you asking about the fonts?
Not me, but when I saw that question coming in, I thought I would love to know the answer to that. So you want to start with the fonts?
I'm going to start with the font. The font is Action Hero. So
but we don't know if it's for the white or for the red, you know?
Oh, the white is the standard open source.
Probably the red. Probably the red.
Helvetica New.
Helvetica New.
Helvetica,
okay,
yeah.
so Action Hero?
Action Hero.
Not my question, but,
but
I was interested as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so Action Hero. Next one. Who comes up with topics and how? Do you think of the engineer's skills first or the topic first?
So we've tried it all. It's both good and bad that InfoIP is such a large organization, because what happens is you get a lot of like these inputs. So you might get inputs for topics from our analytics or search history, or just like when we're looking at Reddit in our industry, what are people searching? So that's one point. Like, okay, what are people looking for? What the audience is interested in? Another point is also our engineers come in and say, oh, we're going to have this feature or something in the wild. We should be creating content. So it's their input, and also it's from my team, which is like now the developer content team, where we come in, we see something that's going to be very hot or interesting, and we say like, oh, we might explore this. And as far as like engineering, like, do we decide on who's writing? I'm guessing that's the question. Like, based on the engineer skills or the topic, it's both. So if we get a topic, we would ask the engineering managers and product, like, who's the best engineer to write about this? So for example, AI, obviously, we already know, like for AI, we have these 3 people that are like go-to. But the same is like when people come in and say, oh, they want to write about something, we'll find a topic for them.
All right, cool, thank you. What's the ideal length for an article?
Depends on the publication. In my experience, for our own content on ShiftMag, the engineering blog posts, and every other developer company I've advised, I would say like between 4,000 and 6,000 characters with, what's the term? With spaces? Yeah, with spaces.
So with spaces. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Okay, questions are pouring in.
Okay, that's good.
How many people are optimal for a workshop, and from how many parts of the organization?
I would say 10 is optimal, 10 to 12. Most workshops that I've run, that's the number of people. You can have more, so you can have like for the product handbook, we had 30 people, but then you need, there's a better example. We had a strategic, half-year strategic workshop just to come up with topics for all of engineering, with 30 of our engineering managers and directors and principals. So it's like 30 to 40 people, and then it's a matter of just like having enough moderators, enough editors in the room. So there was myself and 3 or more my members of the team just to work with them in groups. So it's like 1 person per 12 people. I think that's the best. And as far as like from how many parts of an organization, depends on the content. If you're creating hiring content, you're going to want to have talent acquisition and HR involved. If you're creating like developer content marketing, so a lot of content we create is like for self-serve, for people to actually use the APIs. I want like an engineer in there. I want growth, yeah. If I can get growth in there to like input on like how we can grow this, or even for regions, like because Infobeep has like regional offices like North America, Latin America. If I can get my director of North America to like pitch in a bit, that's awesome.
Okay, cool. If the goal is to attract candidates, who owns the process and outcome? Engineering or recruitment, people, HR?
Ideally, you would have someone that's dedicated to employer branding. So I'd say HR in this case. But they own the process, but the content is owned by engineering, if that makes sense. But now with our team there, we're a team of 12 people in Info. We're the ones owning it directly.
Okay, questions are still pouring in, so let's get down to it. Can any of the suggested team members come from outside the organization? For instance, the editor, if nobody seems to be suitable for the role internally.
Yes, so I've done workshops like this for a dozen other companies. And I'm always the outside contractor coming in, working with their teams. Because like most people don't know how to be editors. So yeah, you can definitely outsource that. Although I'm trying to think of I'm trying to come up with a course to like teach people how to do that inside their organization. But that's a long time coming.
Okay, maybe next conference you can talk about that.
Yes.
Have you ever had someone write a very bad article? How did you deal with that, if yes?
A very bad article? No, not really. Because of the whole like going step by step. Just because we see, like you can see, so for example, for the writing workshops we do monthly, the ideation is like suggest 3 ideas and then get feedback from your peers and your editors. And then you already like, the idea is not going to be bad. Okay, so we have a good idea. Then they outline, and then they get feedback on the outline. So the outline is not going to be bad. So if you go step by step, if the end article is bad, it's because you didn't do these processes, right? But I've had people that have written bad articles and pitched it, oh, could we publish this? And then it's a matter of just like editing it. So we have a person that, in my opinion, there's no bad article. It's just a matter of like working on it a bit more.
Okay, okay. But if you follow your steps, if I understand correctly, so many people are involved that it's very unlikely to have like
a bad article is going to be something that's not going to, honestly, not going to be coming from an engineer. A bad article, in my experience, working for tech media, is PR writing the article that they think is for engineers. And it's so obvious. And they don't trust their engineers to write the article. That's the problem.
Okay, okay, gotcha. We're getting to our first potentially last question. We never know, but it could be. What is your opinion on using copilots or the other LLM-based assistants for facilitating handbook or other technical documentation?
It's great for, I'm not sure even how to word it. It's like great for, not ideation. So having it in the initial idea where you're coming up with I like using them. There's just a certain way. Most people just use them in the wrong way. So most people, for example, and I've had people try to use them in the workshops, and it's always obvious because it's like, because some of them come in, their manager said, oh, you need to write an article, and they come in and they start writing, and you see it's not from their experience, right? So what I would suggest, one is using it to ideate in terms of like giving you ideas what you could write about, but then like giving it your career experience, how you do stuff, etc. Or if, for example, what we do a lot is we have now like 3 podcasts that we're doing. We do a lot of ideation for titles, but we have like these like really detailed prompts that are based on like some of our experiences where I would give it like, okay, here's the guest. Give me like 10 titles. But this is just like get me going in the ideation process. It's never going to be like, oh, it's done. But I do like using LLMs for like as an assistant.
All right, gotcha. Thank you. If there are no more questions, we will see. It seems that's a no. Then thank you very much for your presentation and the answers.
And
a
thank you
huge
for all the
round of
questions.
applause. Thank you very much.